So welcome to this week's episode of Leadership Sound Bites. You smiled and I just paused with Tansy and Michelle. I love to see your smiling face. You and Rocco, some of my favorite people to be in the room with. This week's topic is on the power of adaptive leadership. I had to pause and think what that was because it's the two words together. We're going to kick us off with a quote, and then we're going to unpack some of this stuff. I think it's relevant now more than ever before. Einstein, and one of my favorite people to quote, "The measure of intelligence is the ability to change." And I know you and I talked about, you're like, no, that's not the only measure of intelligence. But when you come from Einstein's thing, it's like the only constant in the world is change. So when you talk about the power of adaptive leadership, I think it's that, I know, it's the recognition that we may have the way we show up, we may have the way we lead with a particular group and it works. But if any of that stuff changes, our outside environment, the team dynamics change, the tasks that we're up against, that we're faced against internally, or we leave to go work for another organization, what we've always done that always worked may not anymore. And so I think that's the power of it, is to look inside and say, what do I need to adjust to meet people, situation, organizations where they're at, to have great outcomes, even if not as good as what I had before, even better. Tansy.
You said everything that I wanted to say. I thought, wow, I mean, I guess she's not going to leave me with anything to share here. Yes, to all of that. You know, the one thing that comes to mind for me is when you're changing from one team to a new team, or maybe one organization to a different organization, and having to come in and learn everything all over again. Again, what used to work for you, the strategies you had, the timing of different reports, or maybe the meetings that you had, they don't work in this new organization. And so now it becomes, okay, how do I figure out what works? And so that's where you go in and you observe to understand what's going on, and try to meet people where they are. You understand, try to meet with individuals to understand kind of what their thinking is, how they work, you know, what reports are they looking at, looking at just various things within the organization. And the one thing that really resonates for me is the organizational change. Big. That's the one I would say at the top of my list that comes to mind after hearing what you talked about.
So when you talk about organizational change, it's that you're moving from one organization to the next.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, because you may be, so you've been in healthcare for more than a minute, right? So what you're doing, right, as far as delivering care to an inpatient population, that hasn't changed.
No.
But everything else around it, the who you lead, the role that you have in the organization, who you report to, payer mix, right? What's that population and stuff? What's the community that you're providing this healthcare in? And so you're right. It's like, take a look around, and part of it too is, and this ticks people off more than anything else, is when you come in and go, well, the way we used to do it, the other organization I was at.
That's literally my pet peeve. I hate that phrase. This is my other favorite. Well, it's not a favorite, another hated phrase.
Yeah.
That's the way we always do it.
Oh, yeah. Well, because, I mean, you look at your undergrad, I'm not your undergrad, your master's, and it's at healthcare innovation. So yes, you're wired to go, okay, we actually need to look at stuff. If that phrase is coming out of your mouth, then we definitely need to look at it.
Absolutely. That's the first place. That's where we're going to start, actually.
So yes, I can hear that. I can see that. So if I think about adaptive leadership and the different elements of adaptive leadership, what's your first indicator that something needs to change for you?
Outcomes. I'm listening for outcomes. So say, for instance, in the organization that I am right now, one of the first things that I came in to look at is what do patient outcomes look like? what's happening day to day on the safety huddle? Where are the opportunities? Where are the disconnects?
Mhm.
Misinformation, misunderstandings. Those are the places where I begin to look and kind of dig to uncover to understand.
So what Tangi's talking about is root cause analysis. Because when I hear that, I think about part of being a leader, and it's a conversation you and I had before, and it was around this expectation that we have that if a leader arrived at a certain title, that these other skills came with them. Maybe behaviors, the thought processes, education level, that basically they knew operations at a certain level. And I think one of the keys around being a successful, or the power in adaptive leadership, is recognizing that title does not equate to experience, skill set, proficiency, anything else. It's a title.
The title, that's it.
And so when you come across people that maybe the title you would expect there will be a certain skill set and it doesn't exist, I think that's where we have to adapt and realize, okay, we have to come in at a different level and support at a different level.
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes you may walk into a team and think, okay, this is awesome. I have this great group of, higher level leaders.
Mhm.
Yet when you interact with them and, have maybe one-on-ones with them, you recognize there are some gaps.
Mhm.
Seen this before. There are some gaps. And then you get into, okay, how do we close the gaps?
Mhm.
So that you can partner with this person to be successful, to be even better than what they are today.
Mhm.
That's the place.
Well, and I love the call out, right? Because I think what's important to do is to recognize that we are, and I think about process improvement, right? The outcomes that we get are a result of our current processes, right? They're designed to deliver our current outcomes. The other thing you can talk about is leadership. So there's an expectation that leaders are responsible for developing their people. Well, as a leader, I can only develop my people to the level that I'm at.
Right.
I can't go beyond me, right? Unless they seek outside help. So if you come into an organization or you have a new team that they aren't at the level that you would expect them to be. What I heard you say, which I think is so important, is don't look at them and go, oh, basically it sucks to be you. There's nothing I can do with you or for you. But meet them where they're at. Realize that they're a product of their environment and leadership that came before, most likely, or what did or did not happen. And support them where they're at so that they can continue to evolve and develop into the leader that they can be, their full potential. And I love that part about it, because otherwise some people may go, yeah, we need someone else in here.
Someone else is not always the answer.
No.
There's so much value in the person that's there. And what I like to look for is desire.
Mm.
Desire to be there, and to the desire to either want to be there, continued desire to want to be there, and desire to improve. If I see those elements in a leader, that's the foundation. We can do anything together. So now then we shift into how do we build a relationship so that we can trust one another, so that we're open to learning and growing and leaning into each other's strengths and weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you get into the building and closing the gap.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're taking me through all these books now, right? 5 dysfunctions of a team, foundations, leader, trust, and how do you build that? So from your perspective on the power in adaptive leadership, what's one of the main things that stands out for you?
Power of adaptive leadership.
Maybe it's your own journey too, because I'm thinking back just in the evolution of you and the journey that you've gone through. Of course, me too. What am I saying? It's both of us. But there's just the power in that. I look back at your leadership journey and how you've just come into your own to where you can easily navigate it in the moment, where before it wasn't easily navigated in the moment.
Yes, I remember those days. Difficult. Wow, that's actually a good call out. I don't think I've ever thought about that before. Um, the thing that comes to mind for me is just hard work. Hard work, never giving up, staying focused, um, clearly defined goals.
Mhm,
What does the way I want to look like really look like?
mhm.
And how do I get there?
I
Those,
have another one for you. And what story have I got going right now?
oh boy. Yes, I remember that as well. Plenty of
But I think that's it. If you think about, because my brain went to how do you step into being an adaptive leader, right? To where you've got adaptive leadership on your side, in your back pocket, in your toolbox, whatever you want to call it. Instead of this is how I lead or this is how I am. And I think part of it is recognizing the story that we may have going on as to why we think we have to stay in that space.
Yes, another thing that comes to mind for me is DISC.
Okay.
Thing that I'm learning about myself. I tried to take this test so many times and throw it in, like,
So
I
it's the DISC, it's the personality indicator assessment DISC. Yes.
absolutely. So typically I come out as a high D, and I want to be something else for sure. Well, interesting thing that I've kind of recognized is I've taken a very similar test and I came out a little different. And so
Hmm.
what I learned about myself, and I feel is relevant to this topic, is adaptability. How do you give the team what they need right now?
Mhm.
Right, they may not need a driver right now.
Hmm.
They may need someone that is supportive and nurturing.
Yeah.
And I say that to say when I took this test again, I came out very different.
Supportive and nurturing.
Yes, supportive, not nurturing, but came out supportive. And I had a lot of thought and discussion behind that because I know typically I come out as a high D,
Mhm.
but I think in the role that I'm in right now, the team needs support. And so I'm kind of leaning into that. So I thought that was interesting.
What comes to mind for me, I go back because I've done DISC workshop a number of times for leaders, and dominant, influence, steady, and compliant. At least John Maxwell's version of it. There's a few different ones out there, but there's three things that actually strongly inform our personality traits, right? DNA, which you're not going to do a lot of changing on that one. Our environment. Right? It could be the environment we grew up in. It could be your current work environment, to what you're talking about, and then role models, our mentors and role models in our lives.
Right.
And so I've gotten asked the question before, does it change? Yes, it changes. It can change unless you're stuck in the same thing all the time and you're not growing. But if you think about it, your environment where you were, you're going to show up a certain way, the environment that you're in, and you recognize that things need to be different. And that's going to inform how you show up. But you also got an awareness around the fact that we're all wired differently.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and I love that you brought it up, but we talk about the power of adaptive leadership is recognizing that we are all wired differently. We have different communication styles, preferences on how we want to be engaged with, communicated with. And if you're a leader and don't recognize that, and you just got one way of doing it, you've got this vast landscape that you're missing out on,
Absolutely.
as far as engaging and making connections. Yeah. So thank you for that.
Sure. Thank you.
So what's one or two things that you want people to walk away with on the topic of the power of adaptive leadership?
When I think about that, the thing that comes to mind for me is courage, because it takes a courageous leader to be open to change and adaptability.
Mm-hmm.
It could seem like a really big mountain to have to climb. So courage.
Thank you. The thing that came up for me when you're talking is how to recognize, it was a question, how do you recognize when you need to step in differently? And I think part of it is take a look if you're constantly battling uphill, or you've dug in, right, to where this is the way it has to be. And maybe things that worked in the past aren't working anymore, or stuff shifted. Start with us first. So take a look inside and figure out, okay, can I shift? What should I be doing differently? What can I be doing differently? And then the other part of it for me too is engage with your team.
Yes.
You know, don't be afraid to ask them, what are your preferences? You and I had a discussion before about what are plus deltas about what we've been doing. What do you want to keep? What should we do differently? But I think that's the thing for me is what do you look at, or how do you know when maybe you do need to shift things up a little bit?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, because the question that I've also asked myself is, what does this person need from me?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I give it to them?
Mm-hmm. I
So,
love that. Thank you. All right. Well, I appreciate the time. This has been Leadership Soundbites for Tansy and Michelle. Please like, share, subscribe. We appreciate it. Comments, topics, whatever that may be. And until next time, thank you.
thank you.